No, I mean, I know I'm delayed, but I'm like really delayed. Like, what am I like? I'm 2 months behind.
There we go. Now we're up and going.
All right, awesome. So, welcome, guys. All right, let's kind of hit it all topics here for today's segment of news and uh, happenings. So, first up is some stuff with China, and the first one is that China plans to release some of their metal reserves. These include things like copper, aluminum, zinc, a lot of the commodities that we see, the prices that have been skyrocketing, and part of it is to help alleviate price pressure by flooding more supply, then it kind of equals demand, so the price will come back down. It's not so overvalued anymore, and they're trying to lower their factory gate price, which are really just kind of like an early stage in the manufacturing process of how they need to pay what it costs to produce their products. It's at a 13-year high, but China has right now said that they're planning on doing this in the near future. So they didn't give a specific date, and we don't have any data on the size of their stockpile. So there wasn't any like clear plan of like this date, this much. So we don't know how much it is, how much it's going to be, when it's going to be, right? And we're not 100% sure what the impact is going to be of this. Copper itself is up 67%, which is used as a macroeconomic indicator because copper is so widely used across production and manufacturing. If the price of copper is going up, it kind of signals that there's more demand in the market. There's more pressure on producers to build things, or that prices are going up and there's a shortage of copper. Right, it's kind of used to gauge that. So that's up pretty big. So China's decisions to do this are definitely could definitely be very helpful to kind of alleviate some of this price pressure. But right now, the London spot prices for aluminum, they were up 5% in June. Anyway, despite this news. So that's why we're saying there's no guarantee. It depends on what traders think is going to happen. It depends on when they actually do it and how much they do. So, but they have been in talks to do this. Some fears, though, with this are that they could create super cycles, right? Where you have a shortage of a commodity and then basically you dump a lot of it into the market. But by dumping lots of the stockpiles, all of a sudden, when things recover and go back to normal, you have less because you've depleted some of your stockpiles, right? Which could then cause another price spike demand because all of a sudden now you need a lot more, you need to buy lots more. So it could create these giant cycles of huge varying prices as we try to normalize and get back to normal manufacturing and transportation operations. The second one is some big news. China is sending their astronauts to their own space station. It's really cool. So this is going to happen on Thursday, which I believe actually just happened now on that part of the world because it's Thursday, I believe, over there. And this is called Tianhe, I believe, is the name of the space station. This was a space station designed solely by the Chinese. So it wasn't a joint venture with other countries. They did it separately from the International Space Station, completely done on their own. It's still under development. They've been running a couple missions to put a couple of pods up there with food, supplies, all the stuff they're going to need. And over the next 2 years, they plan about 11 missions to keep bringing their astronauts up there, keep working on the space station, setting everything up, figuring out all the logistics and everything like that. It's definitely pretty cool. It is obviously a space station that is rivaling the International Space Station, but the thing is, to their credit, is they did it all up, and that does add a lot of credit to China's government and what capable of doing, because they don't necessarily have the same voting cycles. They can kind of stay on agendas and policies longer. They don't really disclose a lot of the funding information for these programs, so we don't actually know how much money's there or where it's coming from necessarily. Not to say there's anything fraud in that, just to say that we don't have any kind of idea. So it is pretty interesting to see this and for them to make really big strides. It's definitely something interesting to see and to know about, because when we're talking about the tech race between other nations and the United States and other countries trying to contain China's development and growth and influence over the economies and security of the world, right? This is definitely something to watch. So this is definitely a win for China and definitely something very interesting and big news happening today.
Oh, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, the amount of effort that it took for the ISS space station that's currently up there in space has been like a joint effort from everybody, and for China to just like really just step it up with their ability to create their own. It kind of looks as if they're kind of dividing off and kind of making their own legacy with their own space station. It's
Yeah, it's definitely really cool. But then also remember that the Chinese government doesn't have to follow the same necessarily rules, and by that I mean you can just kind of fund whatever you want. You want to do a space project, you don't have to worry about the voters. you don't have to worry necessarily about policy and get navigating through lots of complex regulation. So it is interesting, definitely for sure. But that's just to be noted that there is a different way of doing things around the world. So there's different allotments. Um, but I think it is still very cool, and it's gonna be interesting how this turns out because you'll have two international space stations orbiting the Earth, right, from two major powers at a time when they're kind of standing against each other. So in a way, so definitely going to be interesting over the next like 10, 15 years to see how the space race. Because China also landed its first I think it's its first rover on Mars in the flatter bases that the United States started landing in earlier on. But what they landed was more advanced in terms of for their first landing. So even though the U.S. has got 6 or 7 total landings on Mars, and they're moving around and doing all this stuff, they have 50 years of theater on Mars research, years of Mars research. China definitely making big steps and putting stuff up there on the planet and doing so, pretty much self-contained within their own country. So definitely some big happenings today for sure.
Well,
That's going to be cool,
good job, China.
right? That's going to be cool because now they're able to do their own science experiments whenever they want and have less political loopholes and hoops to jump through, and could get stuff in space. And who knows what kind of scientific research and breakthroughs they'll be able to get through up there. So.
Does that mean China has now less access to Chinese scientists now that China is using their own scientists?
I mean, I don't know. There depends on what the science.
Give me the facts, Wyatt. Give me the facts.
Over 1 billion people, I believe they have a lot of scientists over there.
They also have lots of poor people in big swaths of portions of the country.
That's
so remember,
true.
like that's the same thing with India. Like India's got like 1.6 billion people, but that doesn't mean they have like the same proportional number more of doctors. So, but that's the way they had the Olympics in Brazil and those walls to hide off the poor, towns and villages, and everything looked really beautiful. But they go behind it, and you're like, oh, that's not so nice anymore.
Oh, hey, that's real life.
So, but it's like anywhere, they've got their they've got their sides.
Well, we'll definitely be following the story as it progresses because I imagine they're going to be experimenting. Obviously, that's the only reason to have a space station is to experiment in space.
Also because they're not part of NATO, they're not part of that space station, so it does give them a lot of restrictions. So if they want to do it and they're going to basically still stand the positions that they're standing, right? Then they're gonna have to do it themselves. So when and that is objectively isolated. Still very, very cool. Launching your own astronauts up to your own space station. Cool.
That sounds dope. All right, topic number two.
Another one of these politics, a lot of these political topics that has to do with countries is the U.S., Russia, and Turkey. Now, Joe Biden met with Vladimir Putin and the convention in Geneva where they sat down and spoke. And there's a lot of interesting news that, it was supposed to last 5 hours, but only lasted 4 hours. There were supposedly scuffles between U.S. and Russian media at the gates. But besides all that, stuff that you might see, Putin said the talks were productive. There was no hostility. And Biden called the two great powers. These two know each other. They've met before. They have experience with each other. As far as I could tell from what I was reading, that they seem to get along pretty well, and that Putin kind of prefers this relationship because it's something more predictable and stable. But I don't know if that means like, oh, it's easier to control or easier to kind of manipulate to get over on. I don't think that's the case. They had a lot of things to talk about. They were discussing cybersecurity, arms control, the Ukraine, and the fate of the jailed Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny. They did stalled nuclear talks and returned all their ambassadors. So I think about a month or two ago, was it? Russia said, all right, after Biden has come out and said, yeah, Putin is definitely a killer. Putin was like, all right, we're pulling all the ambassadors back. All the U.S. ambassadors like, maybe you should go home and get some new orders. So they're definitely, this is a sign that the relationship of the countries is definitely improving, or at least taking a step in the opposite direction. And then apparently Biden also told Putin that there's certain critical infrastructure that should be off limits for attack when it comes to cyber attacks. Because I don't think there's really any question, at least from the United States side, that there have been attacks from either the Russian government or groups that are sponsored by the Russian government, or at least that are acting on Russian soil and not being prosecuted. So he gave him 16 specific entities from energy to water systems. So we'll see what that does. But it's at least Joe Biden coming out and saying, like, hey, you should know about this. This is what's going on. So overall, the talks were pretty productive. And the most concrete action was to begin nuclear talks to basically help the limited control of the two nuclear powers. So compromise, as well as putting the ambassadors back. So definitely a step back in the right direction there. And then the second one was Belarus, a possible pressure point for Russia versus NATO. And the president of Lithuania says that to swallow Belarus was an old idea in Russia. So I just came about this article, and I just thought it was interesting because it could be a way for Russia to kind of try to say, listen, we want to do things, and you'll let us do things or release certain sanctions, else, we will mount troops on a border, and we will kind of try to absorb this country. So I think the same thing happened. That's what happened with I believe the Ukraine as well, right? One of them countries were absorbed into Russia, or that he mounted an offensive and took that land. That's why he had major sanctions slapped against him and Russia. So it's definitely not unprecedented, and that's just an idea. There's no guarantee that anything's going to happen. I just thought it was an interesting idea, an interesting kind of view of this strategy on the ground. Then the third major one is the Turkish missile defense deal. So the Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, I know Erdogan, but I don't know how to say the first names very well. But he gave no indication on Monday that the deal with Moscow for the S-400 missile systems would be reversed. And this is a mobile surface-to-air missile system the deal was worth about $2.5 billion. This was back in 2017. Delivery was accepted in 2019, 4 missile batteries in total. And the reason the United States has come out and said that this technology should not be operationalized. Why? Because it is very advanced. It can handle multiple targets simultaneously, and also apparently poses a significant challenge to the F-35's weapons development program, which is the most expensive platform that we have, the F-35 fighter jets. So, and of course, there's the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Acts, or CAATSA, CATSA. Under this act, any foreign government working with the Russian defense sector finds itself in the crosshairs of U.S. economic sanctions. So when Turkey did this, they were sanctioned very heavily, and Turkey was a NATO ally. So it was a kind of point of pressure there. But they haven't reversed it, and apparently they have started testing, and as of October, on the Black Sea coast over there in Turkey. So thought that was just very interesting. Not to say there's any real reason, but these are just always things to know about, is when power is thing in certain regions of the world, when leaders are conversing, when deals are being made, especially large deals, especially when it comes to military power strength. It just, these are things that build up in the future and may influence policy decisions, may influence politicians and who is trying to run, what platforms are trying to run on, and what initiatives may try to be funded, right? What we may be trying to spend money on in the future if we need to, plan some way to deal with a problem that results from these kinds of things. So those are the big things interesting there for U.S., Russia, and Turkey today.
Yeah. I mean, world news is always great to know. It's way better than knowing what the Kardashians are doing. So
right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, I think I just know the basics, like what happened, what's going on, what are the gist, regardless of your opinion, an argument on either side, you should just know objectively, like, these events are occurring. There's some noise happening over there. Because if you don't, you're unaware of a lot of the world.
I feel like anytime like Russia's been involved, and I might be honest, Russia, I feel like has been a little quiet. I don't feel like Russia's been making as much noise, or as a world power, making as much noise as it should be. And I kind of feel like it's been keeping to themselves. As for Turkey's definitely been a hot item in the news, where I feel like everybody's been trying to either take over Turkey, right? Is that a thing?
I'm not 100% sure. There were a bunch of conflicts over there, and
I feel like they're in the news quite often, like at least over the last year or two.
They were for a while, especially from 2017, because they did this. They were sanctioned by the United States, so that might be what you saw. I know there were some issues with Ukraine over there and some other countries.
And
I'm not recalling it 100% well. So
it's a perfect example of The Art of War, the book The Art of War from Sun Tzu. When your enemy is destroying themselves, why intervene? Just let them destroy themselves. And that's what's been happening in the United States. We have so much turmoil going on.
The Art of War also states that if your allies are in war, to hold back and wait till your allies destroy themselves among themselves in the war, to create yourself a better power stance, to then enter this Well,
Human
it's not
beings are
usually
all
a
about power and control. So the balance of power has been a quintessential part of, development in most of the modern world. So, back in the day, before we had nuclear weapons and huge territories, wars were waged all the time. It was commonplace for people to try to take each other's territory. Now it's not quite the same. But I agree that any other country that's an adversary of the United States or wishes, to get a better strategic position against the United States over the last couple of years, and even now, probably wouldn't want to interfere too much because, we're doing a good job of tearing ourselves in half at the moment for, being on one side or the other of so many issues that exist that are polarizing everybody and keeping us from getting back to the center and actually talking about the issues and figuring out the real solutions instead of just trying to make your side wins over the other side, which obviously will never work. It never worked in history. It's never working to this day. So, yeah, but that is true. I don't
Okay.
know what's going on in Russia. We don't get a lot of news from there, but
Right,
I don't know.
they're a little quiet. I wouldn't be surprised if some big news comes out of there in the coming months. Okay, topic number 3.
Topic number 3, electric vehicles, right? Kind of continuation of this macro theme in the markets. It's permeating pretty much most businesses, just as the technology and cleaner energy macro shifts are happening as well. GM is planning to spend another 35 billion US dollars on electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles through 2025. And this is a second boost in the last few months, 30% higher than their November numbers. They have 2 new battery factories they're building in Ohio and Tennessee, and they raised their guidance to pre-tax profit to about $8.5 to $9.5 billion from $5.5 billion. So they're definitely expecting a windfall from this. It's definitely an investment for them. They're making kind of big plays. And overall, spending on car companies on electric vehicles has surged 41% across the board. So as I've said before, as I've been saying, this is a macro trend. This is here to stay. This isn't just passing. It was, I'd say maybe 5 years ago, it was kind of, just, it was an idea, but now it's people are investing. Like it's very concrete. People see the value. And even though in electric vehicles, they only account for about 5% of auto sales across Europe, China, and the US right now. So it's still very small. And that's where these companies see the potential because it's an untapped market. If they can get there first and they can get people coming to them, they're going to make a lot of profit. They're going to be in a good position. This could be an interesting way that some of these old auto companies that have really had stagnating inventory and not a lot of profit, not a very big profit margin, and just kind of sitting there. This could be a way for them to actually get on the board and start seeing some price appreciation in the market. So depending on how the investments go, depending on how their markets are, they carve out new pieces of the market, there could be some more growth opportunity here for these stocks that we haven't seen in some time because they've really just kind of been sitting there. Right? Cars are expensive, and when you don't sell them, they depreciate and they sit on your books, but there's really nothing you can do with them, right? So yeah, and also the automakers are benefiting from a profit surge as people are going to buy a lot more, as well as taking advantage of dealerships have less vehicles in some ways in their lots because of the delivery shortage. So they're taking advantage of that and saying, all right, if we have a vehicle shortage, we have room in our lots. We have room to make electric vehicles. So instead of replacing them with the cars that are kind of going out of style, we can invest heavily in replacing that space that we need to with more electric vehicles. So they're trying to take advantage of these things across the board to put themselves in a better competitive position. So definitely. Some people will definitely argue to use Tesla, use their multiples as kind of a parameter, like a ceiling, right, a range to kind of look for and say what kinds of premiums does Tesla get because this is their industry. Can we expect those premiums to transfer to these other auto companies? And if so, if it's a premium from this position, how high should the stock be? What should justify that price? But again, I think there's other considerations here because these companies do still have a lot of bloated inventory. They do still have lots of dealerships. Tesla doesn't do dealerships, right? A lot of these companies do. A lot of these companies have a lot of inventory sitting around that's being unused and depreciating, maybe not as much as Tesla does. So those are different things to think about. They raise their pre-tax profit, and when companies raise their guidance, it's kind of a sign they're saying, "Hey, we've done the math. We think this is reasonable." So we might see some prices increasing slowly over time for this, but it really depends on how well you believe it, right? They're saying this through 2025, so we have to see how these investments materialize as well as other macro trends. So there's definitely a lot of forces in the market, but I would say this is definitely a plus. Definitely going to help the stock grow because it's definitely a a hit in the right direction of value. The only question is, is it still fairly valued for the stock price right now? This can bake into your estimates and may raise that target price, but you still have to kind of look at, the value underneath as a whole and see, is the target price still, cheap compared to what it is now, or is it, far in the future and right now the stock is cheap? So that's definitely
I mean, we have a year to date 52%, a 6 month 46%, 1 month 10%.
Right. So you can see on that chart that you were showing before, I mean, lagged on my screen, but on the chart, you can see that there was in 2020 and they're kind of roaring back, which is, you can see synonymous with a lot of things in the market. You're seeing the growth of people coming out and buying and trying to, fight their way back. But you're also seeing, I think, in that momentum, trades for electric vehicles, trades for this, this new trend, and then trying to find a way to price this in. And of course, they've been announcing electric vehicle stuff for a while. Right. So just because there was an announcement today or just because there's news today doesn't necessarily mean the price doesn't have its value already baked in, because people may have already seen the earlier news and said, you know what, I think it deserves to be up here anyway. This may just be a reaffirmation of certain valuations. It could just be evidence for a new one. You've got to kind of look at the future growth of revenue and cost and try to figure out if what the range of values could be. But I think we've been seeing that price kind of get this value being baked into the price over the last couple of months anyway, since they've been announcing these changes. The second major topic here in EVs is the Alphabet continues to bet big on electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. Waymo, the Google's sibling, right, because it's Alphabet's child, one of Alphabet's child company, announced a $2.5 billion US dollar investing round for self-driving cars. Company said it's driven tens of millions of miles on public roads across 25 cities in the U.S. so far. They are the leader in autonomy because of just how much experience, how much on road time they've put in and testing these things. They do have autonomous vehicles that are as a ride-hailing in Phoenix. They're also working with a couple companies such as UPS, JB Hunt Transport, and AutoNation on working on getting freight and delivery elements involved in this as well. But it still loses money right now. It's still relying heavily on investors to kind of fund it, so it's not very profitable at the moment. But it's still the leader in terms of how much experience it has. But just we said, just because you're the leader, just because you have the most, doesn't necessarily mean you'll be the winner in the end. But definitely something to look at, because they are investing big. They're getting these funding rounds, and they're trying to get this kind of technology commercialized. So definitely, if nothing else, definitely a bump up in the electric vehicle trade and the macro for that entire trade. Yeah. Oh, definitely. We're probably decades away from true just autonomous vehicles on the road everywhere. Just in terms of laws and policies and safety measures, we're probably decades away before we're going to see that. Before we see that pretty much standardized. Where you like everyone's got autonomous cars, and that's a staple. I think we're decades away.
I mean, I remember visiting Mountain View in California, where Google and Facebook and all the tech hubs are. And I remember seeing these autonomous cars with these big hubs on top of the cars, and that was the GPS trying to track and sensor what's happening around it. And they're big and clunky and everything. So Tesla changed the game with its sensors and everything that was able to sense all its surroundings. So we'll see how Google does, because they've had this and by the way, that was over 10 years ago. So they have technology there that they could utilize pretty easily.
Well, yeah, Josh put a picture here. It looks like the top's a little more neat and organized. I don't think it would matter so much for a robotaxi if it didn't look the best, because it has to serve its function of getting to and from. I mean, if it was a car you could buy, an autonomous car, I would definitely recommend style would matter. But I imagine that if it's a service, it might not matter as much. Like we don't really care about how buses and planes look when you get on them. So, as long as it functions well. But I just think they're a long way off from actually being able to implement this as a standard you see across U.S. cities.
I mean, I remember the last time I read about this, it was the advancement in technology using a solid state matter instead of using a rotating a sensor in order to obtain their data, only for the very matter that the car is moving in. It's obviously going to run into bumps. And so that was the last thing I heard of it. It sounded like pretty cool. It sounded like they were making some big advancements, but it's been, like Jeremy said, 5-10 years since we've been, playing with this technology. I feel like we're leading up to somebody, and wasn't it somewhere in was it China that they are using autonomous vehicles already for their taxi services?
Well, I mean, in Phoenix, Waymo has like a robo taxi ride hailing service as well. They're being tested in places. Like, don't get me wrong, they're definitely finding ways to either pay people or convince them to try these things out and give them test cases. But when we're talking about everybody, we're talking about widespread. It's not the issue of necessarily people buying them or them being made. It's the issue of safety, liability, insurance. It's the and also policy. You have autonomous vehicles where there's no driver behind the wheel. You have to update all the laws regarding motor vehicles. The same laws no longer apply. Well, who's liable? What happens if there's an accident? What happens if there's a problem? These things have to be reassessed, and that means we have to go into the world of bureaucracy, and we have to sludge through that friggin' trek, and have them all find a way to make themselves happy and keep everybody in their bases happy and make everybody find a compromise. Meanwhile, main controls so these companies don't get too big, because we're seeing a big push against big tech. So the environment is definitely not as accommodating for big new tech changes at the moment.
But it's accommodating in Singapore, where they have their first autonomous taxis. So Singapore is ahead of the game.
They're the ones who have their first ones out. Yeah, I know a company just went ahead and just took over the market in that area.
Right, and also that I think that's the big thing too. Like if you can find a country or groups of people that are on the same page and can get behind ideas and work together as a unit, you would find that a lot more things would work. I think in the United States, it's just we right now are so different and so divided, and we're so behind on so many problems. It's just, it's a very cool idea. We'll get there eventually. No, I don't doubt that. I just don't know if it'll be in the next decade or two.
Hold on, working together accomplishes things?
That's not capitalism.
No. Well, it is.
My mind was just
if
blown
you work
away.
together, if you work together on the same team to beat other teams, technically it would be. But if you're just all at the same time, you might have capitalism. But that's all. The difference in working together can still exist in capitalistic cities, because the market, our entire existence as like a market financial system, is the cooperation of all the participants. There's no real like structures keeping it all together. We all will it to stay together by the fact that we trust in the system, we have faith in the system, we use the system, and we don't want to we don't allow the system to be dismantled. That's only because we have faith in it. If we didn't, it wouldn't exist. Laws and rules and everything, we think of them as rigid structures, but they're just enforced. It's all about the psychological mindsets and keeping the things running. Once you lose those elements of it and it starts breaking down, then the structure is meaningless. So, okay. And the last topic that I will be speaking heavily about is the Fed meeting today. Everyone, looking to see what the Fed's going to do. What are they going to say? So what effectively they said was, originally in March, they said rate increases till 2024. They revised that, and they said, okay, we're looking for the ones in 2023, put us up to 0.6%. From zero now. It's about 30 of 18 officials indicate this, because they kind of measure the probability of a rate increases by a survey of officials and seeing what they're thinking, what they're saying, and they kind of build a metric as a percentage of probability for the likelihood of rate increases and what they're going to be. So the one thing that people have been noting is that they never see things specific. They're going to roll back on the buying, when they're going to roll back on the repos. And when they're, when specifically they're going to do that. And that's one of the biggest parts of the problem is, yes, interest rates are low and we have to raise them. But so the purchasing of financial assets is tremendously high. I mean, just that free money is just everywhere. And the thing is, in general, you have to start kind of weaning the market of purchasing long before interest rates go up. Because remember, right now, you're pumping lots of money in the economy and the interest rates are dirt low. It's free money mania, which means the system is kind of on this momentum. If you change everything quickly, all of a sudden the system has a huge shock. They call it like a taper tantrum, right? When you taper things off and the markets throw a fit because all of a sudden easy money's gone. Everyone has to restructure everything and figure out how to make ends meet. So, but in general, you want to kind of stop buying slowly over time to get the markets more and more used to less kind of help. And then you raise interest rates because now they're stronger. They can afford to borrow with more higher amounts of interest, which to be, again, from our perspective, it might look like 0.6%, 0%. These are ridiculous. And they are, right? I believe they're ridiculously low compared to the interest rates we all pay. But at the same, when it comes to moving an entire market, everything is pinned to each other. So if you raise interest rate 0.5%, valuations change. And when valuations change like that, people start getting hit with, margin calls and defaults, and people saying, hey, you got to pay more for these loans, and you have to pay these faster, and they restructure these things. So I definitely think the Fed needs to move fast. I think it needs to move faster than it is. 100%. I just don't know what the perfect numbers are via the math. But I think they should be moving faster. But this is what they're saying. So that they're clearly acknowledging that parts of inflation are not transitory, that they may be permanent, and they're monitoring it. But they still see 2%. Their 2% target is in range. And what they're going for right now is maximum employment. So they're trying to get to that 4.5% sweet spot where we get as much of the labor force working as possible. But I'm not 100% sure if their policies are helping that happen, and I'm not sure if they have the ability to kind of tweak that, because it's not necessarily just a labor market issue. It's a psychological issue why people might not be going back, or needs for their families. It might not be so simple. And also, the officials raised their GDP expectations this year from 7% to 7% from 6.5%. So it went up a little bit because we're seeing big growth this year as a result of the rebound from COVID. So we'll see how that kind of turns out. And also some interesting facts that one of the things they're looking for in the labor market is they're finding it hard to gauge some of this stuff. And part of the reason for that is because 2.6 million people retired between February of 2020 and April of 2020. So a ton of people walked off the market by just, retiring of and saying, I'm done, I'm out, I'm just going to, live my life now. So they're trying to figure out how all this is going to kind of rebalance and what the new numbers should be. And the Fed is some people are saying they're dragging the feet, some people are cheering them on, some people are saying they're keeping rates low because they're ridiculous. They're just funding the market madness. Some people think that raising rates obviously is not what they want to do. There's a lot of debate here, and I think I don't envy being the Fed, but the Fed, this is their job. So, but they want to avoid the taper tantrum, and the kind of the balance is between, okay, how do we wean ourselves off while not hurting the economy and making sure the numbers stay stable, but at the same time monitor all the data seeing to make the best decision. So, but we rate hike coming in 2023. We know they said they plan on doing this. They're going to keep and discussing this as some numbers have been revised as well. That's really the big news right now. So, Fed seems to be noticing. It just is a question of, are they noticing fast enough? Yeah, so we did all four of those, so now we're on to Jeremy's.
Well, let's talk about one of the new rules that are coming out that has been mostly anticipated for these meme stocks. This is called SR DTC 2021-005. So the main points are DTC 005, and it came out yesterday. We thought it was canceled off the board because this new rule was supposed to be making its rounds, and then it got wiped off of the DTCC website. But now it's back on, and we're just waiting for it to take effect, and it's effective as soon as filing. So the proposed rule change is going to become effective soon. What this rule states is the purpose is to limit hedge funds and market makers from working together to reset failed to delivered transactions. Because of this, they would be unable to conceal their short positions through deep in the money options, as they have been doing over the past couple of years. One of the stocks that have been making its round is GameStop. It's a huge buzzword nowadays in the stock market, as in the top meme stock. So GameStop is a stock which has been seeing a lot of these activities. So deep in the money call options have been bought at a strike of $16 when the stock is around $180. So that's really deep in the money. This way, the institutions which have shorted GameStop have been able to hide that they have not closed their short positions. A way to do this is called a synthetic put, which a synthetic put is an option strategy that contains short stock positions. So they have a bunch of short stock positions. And what they do is they buy these long call options, and it mimics the same in the books as just having long put options. And it just acts as though in the books, they have delivered and covered all their short positions. So aside from that, DTC is along in this rule. They are reiterating in their verbiage. This is why they've been taking so long, because they want to get away from any type of liability that they have when these institutions are not able to meet deadlines, margin calls, or they begin suffering losses. So the DTC really had to look into this document to make sure they have no liability when everything just starts tanking. Another rule right now would be the self-regulating organization CBOE, the Chicago Board. They came out with a new purposed, new published document that is saying that they want data on short sale volume. So as of right now, we don't have data until a month later in advance, and then we're able to see who's shorted the stocks and what's happening in the market. They want to have it where they have it in real time and what's going to happen. Now, something that's interesting, aside from the reverse repo rate being up again, by the way, at $520 billion, and yesterday is $502 billion. The interesting one today is Citadel. So Citadel closed their Luxembourg branch, and there is a possible correlation. Citadel was asking for a line of credit from the Bank of New York Mellon on April 13th, 2021. So if Citadel defaults on this, they had an agreement with the Bank of New York Mellon to seize all their assets that they put up for collateral. Well, lo and behold, what the asset that was put up for collateral was this Luxembourg location in Luxembourg. So the dissolution occurred 17 days later, April 30th, where Citadel branch in Luxembourg had to be liquidated. Now, what does that say? Well, the SEC, we know, are greedy people, and they will do anything and everything in order to keep their doors open for one more day. And we know this because in 2008, right afterwards, they got through that crisis. Kenny, I forgot his last name, Ken something, he owns Citadel. CEO, he was talking at one of his investor meetings, and he was talking about what he had to do in order to keep his doors open one more day. And he said, well, we let employees go. You cut people's salaries. We even locked down our capital so investors weren't able to attain it anymore. So they are trying to do everything and anything to keep this all under wraps. And it's not surprising that right now, one of their branches just closed in April.
That's interesting. That is
So
very interesting.
they are deep in the water. Now, another interesting thing is XRT.
We have less than a minute.
I remember speaking yesterday or the other podcast that the truth.
He's getting too close, man. Cut him. He's getting too close.
Cut him hard.
Break that dude's legs, man. Make him stop talking.
I had 1 more minute, and I was gonna end it in one more minute, and they're
we
just
should
like,
see if we can look at Zoom's books and see if we find a holding Jimmy Shorts. Like, oh.
We live yet? All right.
Continue.
All right. So the last thing that I was saying was XRT. XRT yesterday was shorted at 178%. Today, I'm now looking at it again at etfchannel.com, and it is shorted at 189%. How the heck did they just increase short sale volume, short interest percentage by 11%?
Probably because of their strategies. Because you have to remember, even though these rules are coming out now, they're not in effect yet. So if people are gonna live this up, they're gonna live it up. The SEC can't look. The SEC, just like most government agencies, won't do a fucking thing to people personally. They will not hold them personally liable. They won't come after them. They'll slap them on the wrist, slap, and then it'll stop. So they're like, if we all just pile in and do this shit, they're gonna come and slap to our bosses. We're still gonna get paid. And then we make all the profit now because they're not going to take it away from us because the SEC's got no spine and the federal government can't pull their head out of their collective ass to be like, listen, if you do illegal things that hurt the economy that are fraudulent, you don't get to just protect your assets anymore. They should reserve the right to go and take and make an example out of these people. Not like take everything they have, take to their personal assets, come after money they've made, garnish their wages, just like they would for a student loan debtor. You know what I mean? Oh, you borrowed, so you should get your wages garnished when you can't repay. Well, what if you commit massive amounts of fraud, millions and billions of dollars? What if you're rigging the system and breaking laws willingly and getting away with it just because you can? What's the punishment for that? If we never punish anyone for those things, then why would people stop doing them? If the punishment is, I got to pay a little money. Well, I made $10 billion in profit. I got to pay a $1 billion fine. So you're saying I'll make $9 billion if I do this?
Oh, yeah.
Why would I not do it? Yeah, why would I not do that?
And this is the
Any
thing.
day I'd take this deal.
Back on those synthetic put options, synthetic put strategies that they're doing, they have all these shorts. They buy deep in the money calls. Guess what? With that strategy, it's seen as a long put position. So when the stock goes down, they're still making money even with those deep in the money call options. It's absurd. Any which way, they are winning. And at this moment, it looks like they're taking a hit because Citadel and Luxembourg just got taken out. They're liquidated. That's because they defaulted on that loan from the New York Bank of Mellon, and now they're in a hole. And they're just digging themselves deeper, and they're going to do anything they can to keep their doors open one more day. Now, on to science. So the only really thing there's a lot that's catching my eye. China's been doing some really awesome stuff with fusion, but that's going to be for another day. There's a new Milky Way in town. It stretches 3.3 billion light years across the cosmos and is said it shouldn't exist. It was found in the UK by the University of Central Lancashire, and these guys did some amazing 3D imaging and with the data in order to see that even behind the Milky Way, there are thousands upon thousands of galaxies that are spanning in a crescent formation, just like Milky Way. And it is dumbfounding all the scientists out there and making everyone think about how large is our universe.
Really, really big.
Really large.
We haven't even come close to mapping out our universe. To say that we're only like kind of tracking it due to the energy that's being used, or the background energy, or the red noise, or red. I mean, we're barely tapping into whatever our universe is. To say that there's other galaxies, I mean, I'm just waiting till they say that our galaxy isn't just like a flat, like a flat platform. You know how they say There's nothing really above it or below it. It's pretty flat. I'm waiting for them to be like, no, we're reaching into dimensional space here. Why, I see your eyes.
I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Do I have to
Space
go
is
into
flat.
astronomy? I'll go into astronomy 101. Don't worry. We'll take you back to let's see.
Jeremy, no one can hear you.
We apparently have mapped everything in our visible universe for us. And there's a 3D model of it, and it's just visible for us at this moment. And we are still understanding and finding out that we didn't. There is so much more that is visible to us because we could use X-ray spectrum. We could use everything in the electromagnetic spectrum, all frequencies, to try and determine what is actually out there. And that's why I have this background tonight, because why not?
Yeah, guys, for everybody who thinks the
I'm
Earth
warm.
is flat, yeah, shut up. The universe is flat. End of story. Suck on that one.
Wait,
oh, jeez,
see,
universe
now
flat.
that-
That
now that's
that just hurt.
Josh. I don't really like you most days, but today I particularly don't like you.
Remember who has the power to turn your voice off.
Oh.
And that is our.
I will literally go
science
after the show
segment.
and make my little private video of my room, just yelling, and I will just keep posting them. I'll have a whole segment that's just like you, Josh.
A
Throwing
little,
them out
a little side commentary.
Right.
I love how this article is saying that this guy, Alexia Lopez, was just chilling out, looking at the night sky. In his research, he was using the light from about 120,000 quasars.
As far.
From there, distant bright cores of galaxies where supermassive black holes are consuming material and spewing out energy. He was just chilling out looking at them. He was just like, yeah, I'm just going to start mapping stuff in the universe. And that's his life. That is an amazing life. I envy him. Alexia, you're my spirit animal.
I love you, Alexia.
You're
would
my
love
spirit
for-
animal. I might get a
I would
tattoo of your
love-
face on my chest, right here.
Yeah, represent.
Especially right there.
Okay, Josh, explain to me why the universe is flat.
Why the universe is flat? It's just what's
Why
been
not?
observed. It's just on a.
Okay, explain it to me. I honestly don't understand. I want you to.
Oh,
Somebody explain it to me.
So pretty much, if you're looking at the universe, we might be right here in the middle, and we are looking at things all around us. But everything that we're looking at isn't exactly like expanding in all directions. It's actually spanning in a flat linear surface. And so the universe isn't as expansive as we thought. It's more on a flat leveled surface. So I'm just waiting for science to be like, oh, hey, look, guys, like we haven't seen
Is
above.
that based on the trajectories of things from the Big Bang, saying they move laterally more than vertically?
I
So
believe they're
therefore,
looking
it would
at.
fit.
So
that
I
ki- it would
found
fit that
something,
shape.
guys. Just by typing in "is the universe flat or curved," I found that the exact shape is still a matter of debate in physical cosmology, but experimental data from various independent sources, WMAP, Boomerang, and Planck, for example, confirm that the universe is flat with only a 0.4% margin of error.
That's good enough
So-
for me.
It's a very small margin of
I'm good.
error. It's still like
I'm so good.
blowing my mind.
But you know what's funny?
because-
You know what's funny? How do we know the universe is flat if we don't know how big the universe is?
Whoa,
That's
whoa,
like
whoa!
saying,
Hey!
I know the
The
shape
FBI
of the
is gonna
universe. I
break
don't know
your
how
door
big it
down right
is.
now.
I don't know how big the universe is. I don't know all the rules of the universe. I don't even know what's out there, but I know what shape it is.
It's flat.
You know, I got
It's geometrically flat, is what.
What
they're
does that
saying.
mean? Because like flat is a two-dimensional concept. Like
Well, if
two-dimensional,
we
so like
use
it's only this
trigonometric
thick.
rules.
This thick. So that's flat. I'm like, I don't know. If it's got if it's not two-dimensional, three-dimensional.
If it doesn't just have an X and Y axis, and there's a Z axis, why it says it's 3D, and it is not flat.
Yes, I would argue if there's three dimensions, your object is not flat. It might look flat. It might, depending on how you view it, if it's a big fat slice, it could be a big fat slice of cake. Because I imagine if the Big Bang exploded and things went laterally instead of vertically, they would settle on trajectories that might appear to hit upper and lower limits of its vertical
So-
incline.
Now
so it could
you're
look
just
flat.
making shit up. Okay. All
Yeah,
right. Now
that's
we're
my brain.
moving
That's
away
why-
from
that's why- that's why when you
science.
say flat,
moving
I have
away
to
from
argue-
real
We
science.
know
My
Josh's
brain-
soul spirit animals are
We'll-
with the cosmologists, so we're just gonna
We'll
take them
call
in our spaceship
the universe-
and
I
drop
don't
them off
believe the
with
universe is
them,
flat.
and we're gonna go on our way.
We'll call this Wyatt Science. And
I was trying to steel man your argument, and I was trying to explain in my mind what I imagine would justify there being a flat space. Because my real argument is, if we don't know how big the universe is, then how do we know what shape it is if we haven't seen the ends of it?
I mean,
Is there an end?
Ed, do you really need to see
If
the
there
end
isn't
to
an
see
end,
the
then
shape?
If
can you have
there
it?
is an end,
But if
is
there
it the
is no
rubber band
end,
theory?
if it's infinite, how can there be a shape? Or if it's continually expanding and contracting, is there really a shape? Or
All right,
can
let-
it expand and contract differently at a different time when it explodes?
Let me ask
is
you this,
just our
Wyatt.
instance of the
If
universe.
you're standing on a flat surface, right in the middle, and let's say this flat surface is just like, 1,000,000 by 1,000,000 miles, and
Okay.
you're right in the middle.
Okay.
Let's just say you're on, for example, a triangle shape, or a circular shape, or a square shape, but you're right in the middle, 1,000,000 miles away from all the edges. Can you tell me what shape
wait,
you're
if it's-
on?
No, not necessarily from my perspective. But then how could you view the Earth is flat? Because how do you know it's flat? How do you know it's not curved? If you're on Earth, for how many thousands of years do we make Earth is flat? Because when I walk straight, I don't curve. But it turns out we're on the face of a curve. It's so big we couldn't tell until we had the technology. What if the universe is just a bigger three-dimensional object? We don't have the technology yet to see the curvature.
And I rest my case. Guys, this is our show. We're ending it like that. So far right now, they can't hear us. They can't talk to us. This is Podcast Random Rabbit. I'm just kidding. I don't think we're done yet.
Well, that was great. We'll see
Wait,
you
we-
guys
are we-
next time.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we'll see
we
you next
just have to.
time.
That was a Twitch censorship just blocking us, saying that the universe was flat, and I definitely feel as though I learned my lesson. The universe is definitely not flat, and we'll just
Well,
listen to Wyatt and just
No,
trust
no,
that
time out.
that the sun
See-
is just part of our ecosystem that's within our bubble. What's it called?
Wait, no.
And
because
that
just because I don't
the
think the
world
Earth,
is
the universe
flat.
is flat doesn't mean I think we live.
Um,
no, nonsense.
water doesn't
This is-
exist.
This is defamation.
And we pretty much just live in a quantum
Defamation.
entanglement attached to, like, I don't know, Beanie Babies in a
Yeah.
cartoon. And so pretty much our reality is just based off of a children's story.
But how could our reality be based on something that didn't exist until after reality was created?
Oh, that's just the chicken and the egg. You're just getting complicated with the
All
semantics.
right, we're gonna be back later on with that most complicated of theories to go into. Great philosophy.
Okay,
Have a good night, everybody.
I think that's all of our topics for today. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. We definitely enjoyed this round of topics. Sticking for tomorrow, we're going to be back at it again. 6:30 Pacific Standard Time and 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. And if you're in the middle of the United States, then you could figure that stuff out. Thank you for coming on, Wyatt. Thank you for coming on, Jeremy. You guys
Always
definitely
happy to be
are insightful. I feel more knowledgeable at the end of the day. I sleep with a headache because of how much knowledge I absorb.
You're welcome.
Well, tonight you can sleep in a non-flat universe.
I'll sleep on a flat pillow, on a flat bed, on a flat floor.
It's not flat.
Okay,
it's
that's
none
our
of those things
show
are
for today. We are living in a curved universe, and we're going to stick to that. I'm just kidding. It's flat. Everything's flat, just like me. Okay, thank you for joining. Jay, thank you for our 3 viewers. I hope you guys are all subscribed. If you guys are our 3 only subscribed viewers, then welcome back, Wyatt's girlfriend. Welcome back, Jeremy's girlfriend. Welcome back, my girlfriend. Obviously, that 3rd viewer is not my girlfriend, and so We really appreciate you. I hope maybe we could go on a date someday and you'd become my girlfriend. Come back tomorrow and we will definitely blow your mind away again. This is Random Wyatt and we are signing off. You guys have a good night.